My name is Mark, and I've been married to Jenny for almost 12 years now. We met in college, and our relationship blossomed from there. We shared everything: dreams, struggles, and countless happy moments. We were that couple everyone admired, the ones who seemed to have it all together. Or so I thought. Jenny and I never had kids, a mutual decision we made early on. Instead, we poured our energy into our careers and enjoyed the freedom to travel and explore new places together. One of our favorite traditions was taking an annual vacation, a time to disconnect from our busy lives and reconnect with each other. But this year, things felt different. Jenny had always been outgoing and charismatic, the life of the party. Lately, though, she'd been distant, often lost in her thoughts. I noticed she was spending more time on her phone, quickly putting it away whenever I entered the room. It was unlike her to be so secretive, and a nagging feeling of unease began to settle in my chest. Our recent vacation to a tropical paradise was meant to be a chance to reignite the spark between us. Jenny had suggested it, and I eagerly agreed, hoping it would help us reconnect. But even as we boarded the plane, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The first few days of our trip were filled with the usual activities: beach lounging, exploring local markets, and indulging in exotic cuisine. Jenny seemed happy, her laughter echoing across the waves as we sipped cocktails by the pool. Yet, there were moments when I caught her staring off into the distance, her smile fading into a contemplative frown. One evening, as we strolled along the shoreline hand in hand, I decided to address the elephant in the room. "Jenny, is everything okay?" I asked gently, squeezing her hand for reassurance. She glanced at me, her eyes reflecting the setting sun. "Of course, Mark. Why do you ask?" "You've just seemed a bit distracted lately," I said, choosing my words carefully. "I want to make sure everything's all right between us." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm fine, really. Just work stuff on my mind, that's all." I nodded, wanting to believe her. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her distraction than just work. The next day, we decided to join a guided tour to explore the island's hidden gems. Our tour guide, Alex, was a charming and knowledgeable local who instantly captivated the group with his stories and charisma. Jenny seemed particularly taken with him, laughing at his jokes and engaging in animated conversations. At first, I dismissed it as harmless fun. After all, Jenny had always been friendly and outgoing. But as the tour progressed, I noticed her lingering looks and subtle touches, and an uncomfortable knot began to form in my stomach. That night, as we lay in bed, I couldn't help but replay the day's events in my mind. Jenny's laughter, her bright smile, the way she seemed to come alive in Alex's presence. It all felt like a stark contrast to the distance I'd been feeling from her lately. "Is it just me? Or did you really enjoy Alex's company today?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. She turned to face me, a hint of defensiveness in her eyes. "He's a good guide, Mark. He made the tour fun." "I know," I said, forcing a smile. I guess I felt a bit left out." Jenny sighed, reaching out to touch my arm. "Mark, you have nothing to worry about. It was just a tour. Let's enjoy our vacation, okay?" I nodded, but the uneasy feeling persisted. As I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't shake the suspicion that there was more to Jenny's behavior than she was letting on. And little did I know, this was just the beginning of a series of events that would unravel the very fabric of our marriage. The next morning, we woke up to another beautiful day in paradise. Jenny seemed more relaxed, her usual vibrant self. We spent the morning lounging by the beach, enjoying the warm sun and the cool ocean breeze. Around noon, Jenny suggested I visit the local market to pick up some fresh fruit and snacks for our afternoon by the pool. She said she wanted to take a nap and rest in the room for a bit. "Sure thing, babe," I said, giving her a quick kiss before heading out. The market was bustling with activity, the air filled with the scent of tropical fruits and the chatter of vendors. I wandered through the stalls, picking up an assortment of goodies, trying to shake off the lingering unease from the previous day. I told myself that I was being paranoid, that Jenny's friendliness with Alex was just her way of making the most out of our vacation. With my bag full of fresh fruits and local snacks, I made my way back to our hotel. As I approached our room, I noticed the door was slightly ajar. A flicker of confusion passed through me. I was sure I had closed it when I left. I pushed the door open gently and stepped inside, calling out, Jenny, I'm back! There was no response. I walked further into the suite, and that's when I heard it. Muffled voices, and a soft rhythmic sound coming from the bedroom. My heart started pounding in my chest as I slowly made my way towards the noise. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, hoping against hope that I was mistaken. I stood outside the bedroom door, my hand trembling as I reached for the handle. With a deep breath, I pushed the door open, and the scene before me made my blood run cold. There was Jenny, tangled in the sheets, her body entwined with Alex's. Their movements were unmistakable, the intimacy of their actions searing itself into my mind. For a moment, everything went silent. I stood there, frozen, the bag of market goods slipping from my grasp and crashing to the floor. The sound startled them, and they both turned to look at me, their expressions shifting from pleasure to shock and fear. "Mark!" Jenny screamed, scrambling to cover herself with the sheets. "I can explain!" But I was beyond words. Rage and betrayal surged through me like a tidal wave. My eyes locked onto Alex, who was hastily trying to grab his clothes. Without thinking, I lunged at him, my fist connecting with his face in a sickening crunch. He staggered back, blood streaming from his nose, a look of terror in his eyes. "You bastard!" I roared, my voice trembling with fury. "How dare you touch my wife!" Alex held up his hands in a futile attempt to defend himself. "Man, I'm sorry, I didn't know." "Didn't know?" I spat, grabbing him by the collar and shoving him against the wall. "You knew exactly what you were doing!" Jenny was sobbing now, pleading for me to stop. "Mark, please, it's not what you think!" I turned to her, my eyes blazing. "Not what I think? I think I just walked in on my wife fucking another man. How is that not what it looks like?" She was a mess of tears and apologies, but her words felt hollow, like a cruel mockery of our vows. I let go of Alex, who slumped to the floor, clutching his broken nose. My chest heaved with the effort to control my breathing, my mind spinning with disbelief and rage. "Get out!" I hissed at Alex, pointing to the door. "And if I ever see you again, I'll do more than break your nose." He didn't need to be told twice. He grabbed his clothes and bolted from the room, leaving a trail of blood behind him. I turned back to Jenny, who was still crying, her face a picture of guilt and desperation. "Mark, please let me explain," she begged, reaching out to me. I stepped back, the distance between us feeling like an insurmountable chasm. "Explain? How do you explain this, Jenny? How do you justify betraying me like this?" She sobbed harder, her words coming out in broken gasps. I was lonely, Mark. You were always busy with work, and I felt so alone. Alex, he was just a distraction. He didn't mean anything." "A distraction?" I echoed, my voice breaking. "You destroyed our marriage for a distraction?" She shook her head, her eyes pleading. "No, Mark, I love you. I never stopped loving you. It was a mistake, a horrible mistake." But her words were like ashes in my mouth. The woman I had trusted, the woman I had built a life with, had betrayed me in the worst possible way. I couldn't bear to look at her, to see the face that had once brought me so much joy now twisted in guilt and shame. "I can't do this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I need to get out of here." I turned and walked out of the room, out of the hotel, my mind a whirlwind of pain and anger. The beautiful paradise we had come to enjoy had turned into a nightmare, and I was left to pick up the pieces of my shattered heart. I stormed out of the hotel, my mind in turmoil, struggling to process what I had just witnessed. Jenny, the woman I had loved and trusted for so many years, had shattered our life together in an instant. As I wandered aimlessly along the beach, the sun setting in the distance, I knew I couldn't just leave things unresolved. I had to confront her, to demand answers and make sense of the chaos that had engulfed my world. By the time I returned to the hotel room, darkness had fallen. The lights were on, casting a stark glow on the disheveled bed and the remnants of our shared betrayal. Jenny was sitting on the edge of the bed, her eyes red and swollen from crying. The sight of her made my stomach churn with a mixture of anger and sorrow. "Mark," she whispered as I entered, her voice trembling. "Please, let me explain." "Explain," I snapped, my voice echoing in the room. "Explain what, Jenny? How you ended up in bed with another man? How you destroyed our marriage for a fling?" Her face crumpled, and she sobbed into her hands. "It wasn't like that. I was lonely, Mark. You were always working, always away. I felt so alone. Lonely I repeated, my anger rising. And that justifies cheating on me? Sleeping with the tour guide while we're supposed to be on vacation to reconnect. She stood up, her eyes flashing with a mix of guilt and defiance. You don't understand. You were never there for me. I needed someone, anyone, to make me feel alive again. I clenched my fists, struggling to keep my composure. And instead of talking to me, instead of trying to fix our problems, you chose to fuck another man. Do you have any idea how that makes me feel? How betrayed I am? Jenny took a step towards me, her hands reaching out. Mark, I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but I love you. We can work through this. We can fix it. I stepped back, shaking my head. Fix it? How do you fix something like this? You've destroyed everything we had. Every bit of trust. Every ounce of love. It's gone, Jenny. She was crying harder now, her shoulders shaking with each sob. Please, Mark, don't do this. Don't leave me. We can make it right. I felt a surge of anger, a need to lash out, to make her feel the pain she had inflicted on me. Make it right? You think you can just say sorry and everything will be okay? It doesn't work like that, Jenny. You've ruined us. She fell to her knees, clutching at my legs. Mark, please, I can't lose you. I can't. I looked down at her, the woman I had once loved more than anything, now reduced to a pleading, desperate figure. It's too late, Jenny. You've already lost me. With that, I turned and started packing my things. The room felt suffocating, filled with memories of what once was and the betrayal that now tainted everything. As I threw my clothes into my suitcase, Jenny continued to beg, her voice a constant background noise to my actions. Mark, don't go. We can go to counseling. We can try to rebuild. Please, don't leave me. I zipped up my suitcase and turned to face her one last time. I can't stay, Jenny. I can't look at you without seeing what you've done. You've broken us beyond repair. She reached for me, her fingers grazing my arm. Mark, please, I love you. I pulled away, my heart heavy with the finality of my decision. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. Goodbye, Jenny. I walked out of the room, her sobs following me down the hallway. The hotel staff glanced at me with curious eyes, but I ignored them, focused only on getting away from the nightmare that my life had become. I reached the lobby and called for a cab to take me to the airport. I couldn't stay here any longer, surrounded by the ruins of my marriage. As I waited for the cab, I sent a quick message to my boss, explaining that I needed to return home immediately due to a personal emergency. The reply was understanding, a small comfort in the midst of my turmoil. The cab arrived, and I climbed in, giving the driver the airport's address. The drive was a blur, my mind racing with thoughts and emotions. Anger, betrayal, sorrow. They all mixed together, creating a storm inside me. I stared out the window, watching the island's beauty pass by, now tainted by the memories of what had happened. At the airport, I booked the first available flight home. The hours until departure dragged on, each minute a reminder of the pain I was trying to escape. Finally, my flight was called, and I boarded the plane, sinking into my seat with a weary sigh. As the plane took off, I closed my eyes, hoping to find some solace in sleep. But sleep was elusive, my mind replaying the events of the past few days. Jenny's laughter, her betrayal, the look of guilt and desperation on her face. It all haunted me, refusing to let go. I knew that going home wouldn't erase the pain, but it was a start, a chance to rebuild my life without the constant reminder of Jenny's infidelity. When the plane landed, I made my way through the airport in a daze, the familiar surroundings offering a small measure of comfort. I called for another cab, directing it to my house. The place that had once been a sanctuary now felt like a hollow shell. As I stepped inside, the silence was deafening. I dropped my suitcase by the door and took a deep breath, the reality of my situation settling in. Jenny had destroyed our marriage, and there was no going back. I had to move forward, to find a way to heal and rebuild my life. I walked to the kitchen, the emptiness of the house pressing in on me. As I poured myself a drink, my phone buzzed with a message. I glanced at it, expecting more pleas from Jenny, but it was a message from a friend who had heard about the situation. Hey Mark, I heard what happened. I'm here if you need anything. I sighed, the support a small comfort in the midst of my pain. I typed a quick reply, thanking them for their concern, and set my phone aside. As I sipped my drink, I let the reality of my new life sink in. It wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to move forward, to find a way to heal from the betrayal that had shattered my world. And as I sat there, in the silence of my home, I made a promise to myself. I would rebuild my life, stronger and better than before. Jenny's betrayal had broken me, but it wouldn't define me. I would rise from the ashes of our marriage, ready to face whatever came next. I spent the first few hours back home in a haze, the reality of my situation sinking in deeper with each passing moment. The house felt emptier than ever, every corner holding memories of a life that now felt like a cruel illusion. I sat on the couch, a drink in my hand, staring blankly at the wall. The alcohol provided a slight numbness, a temporary relief from the overwhelming pain and anger that churned inside me. As I took another sip, the door creaked open. I turned to see Jenny standing there, her face puffy from crying, eyes filled with desperation and regret. My initial reaction was a surge of anger. How dare she come here after everything that had happened? But instead of confronting her, I stayed silent, taking another long drink. "Mark," she began, her voice trembling. "I know I have no right to ask for anything, but please, can we talk?" I didn't respond. I couldn't. The words caught in my throat, trapped by a mix of fury and heartbreak. She took a tentative step forward, her eyes pleading with me to give her a chance to explain, to fix what was irreparably broken. "Please, Mark," she continued, her voice cracking. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But we can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can try to rebuild what we had." I remained silent, the weight of her betrayal pressing down on me like a physical burden. My grip tightened around the glass, my knuckles white. The thought of her pleading for another chance after what she had done felt like a cruel joke. Jenny moved closer, reaching out to touch my arm. "Mark, please. I love you. I can't lose you." Her touch sent a jolt of anger through me, and I pulled away sharply. The silence between us grew heavier, the tension thickening the air. I stood up, unable to bear her presence any longer. I needed to get her out of here, out of my sight, out of my life. Without a word, I walked to the kitchen and grabbed my phone. I could feel her eyes on me, filled with confusion and fear. As I poured another drink, I opened the messaging app and started typing. "Mark, get the fuck out of the house, now, we're done." I hit send and turned around to face her. She looked at her phone, her face crumpling as she read the message. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but I felt no sympathy, only a cold, hollow satisfaction at finally taking control of the situation. "Mark," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Please don't do this." I didn't respond. Instead, I walked past her, heading towards the stairs. I needed to be alone, to escape the suffocating presence of the woman who had torn my heart to pieces. As I climbed the steps, I heard her start to sob, a sound that once would have broken me, but now only deepened my resolve. In the bedroom, I closed the door behind me and leaned against it, taking a deep breath. The room felt like a sanctuary, a place where I could momentarily escape the chaos that had taken over my life. I took another sip of my drink, the burn of the alcohol a welcome distraction from the pain. Downstairs, I heard the front door open and close. I walked to the window and looked out, seeing Jenny standing on the porch, her shoulders shaking with sobs. She checked her phone again, as if hoping the message had somehow changed, that it was all just a bad dream. But it wasn't a dream. It was the harsh, unforgiving reality of her actions. She stood there for a few more moments, then slowly walked away, her figure disappearing into the night. I watched her go, a strange mix of relief and sorrow washing over me. This was the end of us, the end of a life I had once cherished. I turned away from the window and sat on the edge of the bed, the weight of the day's events settling heavily on my shoulders. The house was silent now, a stark contrast to the turmoil that raged within me. I finished my drink and set the glass down, running a hand through my hair as I tried to make sense of everything. In that silence, I felt the full impact of Jenny's betrayal. The love we had shared, the dreams we had built, all of it was gone, replaced by a cold emptiness. I knew the road ahead would be difficult, filled with moments of doubt and pain, but I also knew that I had to move forward, to find a way to heal and rebuild my life. As I lay down, the exhaustion finally taking over, I made a promise to myself. I would not let Jenny's actions define me. I would rise from this, stronger and wiser, and I would find a way to reclaim my happiness, no matter how long it took. The days that followed Jenny's departure were a blur of emotions: anger, betrayal, sorrow. Each passing moment felt like an eternity as I grappled with the reality of what had happened. I spent most of my time alone, nursing my wounds with a steady supply of alcohol and bitter thoughts. But as the days turned into weeks, the anger began to harden into a cold resolve. I couldn't just let her betrayal go unanswered. I needed to make her feel the pain she had inflicted on me. One evening, as I sat in the dim light of the living room, nursing yet another drink, an idea began to form in my mind. I wanted to humiliate her, to expose her for the person she truly was. It was a dark, vengeful thought, but in my state of mind it felt justified. I needed to reclaim some semblance of control over the situation, to take back the power she had stolen from me. I grabbed my laptop and began to search for local escort sites. It didn't take long to find one that seemed fitting for my plan. The site was sleazy, the kind of place where anonymity was valued and discretion was promised. It was perfect. Creating a profile for Jenny was disturbingly easy. I used photos I had taken of her during happier times, carefully cropping out any identifying backgrounds. I chose the most flattering ones, the ones that showed off her beauty and charm, traits that had drawn me to her in the first place. I wrote a description that painted her as an adventurous, open-minded woman looking for excitement. It was sickeningly ironic, given how she had found her excitement with Alex. As I filled out the details, a twisted satisfaction settled over me. This was my way of reclaiming some of the dignity she had stripped away from me. I listed services, set prices, and even added a few testimonials to make the profile seem legitimate. The entire process was methodical, driven by the cold fury that had taken root inside me. Once the profile was complete, I sat back and stared at the screen. There it was, Jenny's new identity, plastered on a site for anyone to see. I imagined her reaction if she ever found out, the horror and shame that would wash over her. It was a petty revenge, but it felt like a necessary one. I submitted the profile and watched as it went live, the image of Jenny smiling provocatively now available for anyone browsing the site. I felt a twisted sense of accomplishment, a small victory in the midst of my devastation. I closed the laptop and took another drink, the alcohol burning a path down my throat, mingling with the bitter satisfaction of my actions. Days passed and I monitored the profile, watching as it garnered views and messages. I didn't respond to any of them. It was enough to know that people were seeing her, judging her. I wanted her to feel the sting of humiliation, to know that her actions had consequences. One afternoon, as I was scrolling through the messages, a new one caught my eye. It was from someone claiming to know her, to have recognized her from the photos. My heart raced as I read the message, the realization that my revenge might be exposed sending a chill down my spine. But then, another thought took hold. What if this person confronted her? What if they told her about the profile? The idea of Jenny being confronted by someone who had seen her on the site filled me with a dark satisfaction. I imagined the look on her face, the panic and shame that would surely follow. It was a cruel fantasy, but one that gave me a twisted sense of justice. As the days turned into weeks, the profile continued to attract attention. I found myself checking it less frequently, the initial thrill of revenge slowly giving way to a deeper sense of emptiness. The satisfaction I had felt was fleeting, replaced by a gnawing realization that my actions, however justified they had seemed, were not truly healing the wounds Jenny had inflicted. One evening, as I sat alone in the quiet of the house, the weight of my actions pressed down on me. The profile, the messages, the twisted satisfaction. It was all a reflection of the pain and anger that had consumed me. But it wasn't bringing me any closer to healing. It was time to let go, to find a way forward that didn't involve vengeance. With a heavy heart, I logged into the site and deleted the profile. It was a small step, but it felt necessary. Revenge had given me a momentary sense of control, but it wasn't the answer. I needed to find a way to rebuild my life, to move past the betrayal and find peace. As I closed the laptop, a sense of resolve settled over me. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to find a way through. Jenny's betrayal had broken me, but I wouldn't let it define me. I would rise from the ashes of our marriage, stronger and wiser, ready to face whatever came next. After deleting Jenny's profile, I felt a strange sense of clarity. The act of seeking revenge had not brought me the peace I craved, but it had shown me something important. I needed to take control of my life and move forward. The next step was clear. I had to end my marriage officially. There was no salvaging what was left between us, and the only path to healing was through finality. The next morning, I called Marcia, my lawyer, and set up an appointment. As I sat in her office, the sterile environment felt oddly comforting. It was a place where things got resolved, where loose ends were tied up. Marcia was understanding, her demeanor professional yet empathetic as she laid out the steps we needed to take. "We'll file the divorce papers and serve them to Jenny," she explained. "Given the circumstances, this should be straightforward. Do you have any specific requests or concerns?" I took a deep breath. "I just want it to be over. No drawn-out battles, no drama. I want to move on." Marcia nodded. "We'll aim for an uncontested divorce. If she agrees, it will be quicker and less painful for both of you." As we discussed the details, I felt a sense of relief. Taking this step was hard, but it was necessary. I needed to free myself from the toxic shadow of our broken marriage. When I got back home, I started packing Jenny's remaining belongings. It was a cathartic process. Each item I placed in a box, a small step towards reclaiming my space. I couldn't avoid the memories attached to each object, but I focused on the task at hand, determined to purge the remnants of our life together. A few days later, Marcia called with an update. "We've served the papers to Jenny. She received them today." "How did she react?" I asked, my heart pounding. "She seemed shocked, but she didn't say much. We'll know soon enough if she plans to contest it." I thanked Marcia and hung up, feeling a mix of anticipation and dread. I knew that serving the papers was just the beginning, but it was a crucial step towards closure. That evening, as I sat on the couch with a glass of whiskey, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Jenny. "Jenny, I got the papers. Is this really what you want?" I stared at the screen, my emotions a whirlwind. This was my chance to say everything I had held back, but I realized that rehashing our pain wouldn't help. Instead, I typed a simple response. "Mark, yes, it's what I want. It's what's best for both of us." The dots indicating her typing appeared and disappeared several times before her reply came through. "Jenny, I'm so sorry, Mark. I never meant to hurt you. I agree to the divorce." Her message was a strange mix of relief and regret, but I knew that agreeing to the divorce was the right step. It was the only way to move forward, to find a semblance of peace. Over the next few weeks, the legal process moved quickly. Marcia was efficient, handling the paperwork and negotiations with a steady hand. Jenny and I communicated through our lawyers, avoiding direct contact. It was painful to see our marriage reduced to legal terms and signatures, but it was necessary. One afternoon, Marcia called with the news I had been waiting for. "The divorce is finalized, Mark. You're officially free." I hung up the phone and sat in silence, letting the reality sink in. It was over. The chapter of my life with Jenny had come to a close, and while the wounds were still fresh, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The future was uncertain, but it was mine to shape. That evening, I decided to mark the occasion. I opened a bottle of champagne I had been saving for a special moment. This wasn't the celebration I had imagined, but it was significant in its own way. I poured a glass and stepped out onto the porch, the cool night air a welcome contrast to the turmoil of the past months. As I raised my glass, I reflected on the journey I had been through. The betrayal, the anger, the revenge, it had all brought me to this point. I had survived the worst, and now it was time to rebuild. I took a sip, the bubbles tingling on my tongue, and made a silent toast to new beginnings. The days that followed were a mix of routine and small victories. I focused on my work, reconnected with friends, and started taking better care of myself. Each step forward felt like a triumph, a testament to my resilience. One evening, as I was sorting through some old photos, I came across an album of our travels. I hesitated, then flipped through the pages. The memories were bittersweet. a reminder of happier times that now felt like a distant dream. But as I closed the album, I realized that those moments, though tainted by betrayal, were a part of my journey. They had shaped me, and I could choose to learn from them rather than letting them define me. I placed the album back on the shelf and took a deep breath. The future was uncertain, but it was also full of possibilities. I had made it through the darkest days, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next. The scars would remain, but they were a testament to my strength, a reminder that I could survive and thrive. As I sat down with a cup of coffee, the morning sun casting a warm glow over the room, I felt a sense of peace. The road ahead was still long, but I was ready to walk it, step by step, towards a brighter, better future. Months had passed since the divorce was finalized. The initial turmoil of emotions had settled into a calmer rhythm of daily life. I had thrown myself into my work, finding solace in the routine and the clear-cut nature of professional responsibilities. It helped me reclaim a sense of purpose and stability. My friends and family had been supportive, providing a much-needed anchor during those turbulent times. Yet, despite all the progress, the wounds were still there, healing but not forgotten. One afternoon, I decided to take a walk in the park near my home. It was a beautiful spring day, the air filled with the scent of blooming flowers and the sound of children playing. I found a bench and sat down, letting the peaceful surroundings wash over me. As I watched the world go by, I reflected on everything that had happened and how far I had come. The betrayal had been devastating, but it had also been a catalyst for change. It forced me to reevaluate my life, my priorities, and what I truly wanted. In the process of rebuilding, I discovered strengths I didn't know I had. I had faced my darkest fears and emerged stronger on the other side. As I sat there, my phone buzzed with a message. It was from an old college friend, Alex, not the tour guide, but a good guy who I hadn't been in touch with for years. He had heard about the divorce through mutual friends and wanted to catch up. I hesitated for a moment, then replied, agreeing to meet him for coffee the next day. It felt good to reconnect with people who had known me before my life had taken such a drastic turn. The next morning, I met Alex at a cozy cafe downtown. We spent hours reminiscing about our college days, laughing about old memories, and catching up on each other's lives. It was refreshing to talk to someone who knew me outside of the context of my failed marriage, who could see me for who I was, not just what I had been through. "So, what's next for you, Mark?" Alex asked, taking a sip of his coffee. "Any big plans?" I shrugged, smiling. "Just taking it one day at a time. I've been thinking about traveling again, maybe visiting some of the places Jenny and I never got around to. It's time to make new memories." "That sounds like a great idea," he said, nodding. "You deserve some adventure. And who knows, you might meet someone special along the way." I chuckled, the idea of dating again still feeling a bit foreign. But it was a possibility, one I wasn't entirely closed off to. Maybe. For now, I'm just focusing on myself and what makes me happy. As we said our goodbyes and parted ways, I felt a renewed sense of optimism. Life was full of possibilities, and I was ready to embrace them. I went home and started making a list of places I wanted to visit, feeling a spark of excitement I hadn't felt in a long time. Over the next few weeks, I planned my first solo trip to Italy. It was a place Jenny and I had always talked about visiting but never did. Now it was my destination, a symbol of my new beginning. I booked my flights, arranged accommodations, and created an itinerary that included both popular attractions and hidden gems. When the day of departure arrived, I felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement. As the plane took off, I looked out the window, watching as the familiar landscape of home disappeared beneath the clouds. This trip was more than just a vacation. It was a statement of independence, a declaration that I was moving forward with my life. Italy was everything I had hoped for and more. The beauty of the countryside, the rich history of the cities, and the warmth of the people filled me with a sense of wonder and joy. I wandered through the streets of Rome, explored the vineyards of Tuscany, and marveled at the art in Florence. Each day was a new adventure, a new opportunity to discover not just the world, but also myself. One evening, as I sat at a cafe in Venice, watching the gondolas glide along the canals, I felt a deep sense of peace. The pain of the past had not vanished, but it had transformed into something different, a part of me that had shaped who I was, but did not define my future. I was ready to let go, to embrace the possibilities of what lay ahead. Back home, I settled into a new routine, one that included not just work, but also the hobbies and interests I had rediscovered. I joined a photography club, started hiking regularly, and even took up cooking classes. Each activity was a step towards building a life that was rich and fulfilling on my own terms. One evening, as I was sorting through the photos from my trip, my phone buzzed with a notification from a dating app I had reluctantly signed up for a few weeks earlier. I had matched with someone named Emma, who shared my love for travel and photography. I hesitated for a moment, then decided to send her a message. We started chatting, and it quickly became clear that we had a lot in common. Our conversations flowed easily, and after a few weeks of messaging, we decided to meet for coffee. Emma was kind, intelligent, and had a spark in her eyes that drew me in. As we sat in the cafe talking and laughing, I felt a connection that I hadn't felt in a long time. It was too early to know where it would lead, but it was a promising start. As I walked home that evening, I felt a sense of hope and excitement for the future. Life had thrown its hardest challenges at me, but I had faced them head-on and come out stronger. I had learned that happiness was not something that came from another person, but from within. And now, I was ready to share that happiness with someone new, to build a future that was brighter and more fulfilling than anything I had imagined. The betrayal and pain of the past were still a part of me, but they no longer controlled me. I was free to move forward, to create a life that was truly my own. And as I looked ahead, I saw a future filled with endless possibilities, a future that I was excited to embrace. Life had taught me that while we cannot control the actions of others, we can control our response to them. We can choose to let go of the pain, to forgive ourselves for the mistakes we made, and to embrace the opportunities that come our way. And in doing so, we can find a happiness that is deeper and more enduring than anything we have known before. As I lay in bed that night, reflecting on the journey I had been through, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the strength I had found within myself, for the support of friends and family, and for the new beginnings that lay ahead. I knew that the road would not always be easy, but I was ready to face whatever came my way. Because I had learned that true strength comes not from avoiding pain, but from facing it, embracing it, and letting it shape us into better, wiser, and more resilient people. And with that knowledge, I was ready to step into the future, with hope in my heart and a determination to live my life to the fullest.